Hey, good morning, everybody. It is another great day to be alive. And in today's episode, we are doing an entrepreneur interview. I had the very special privilege of being able to interview Veronica Sopher, the co founder of HCS Vintage Box. They are a mail order subscription service for vintage comic books, graphic novels, video games, action figures, toys, t shirts, trading cards, memorabilia, so much more. Every box has a retail value of $100. They curate the perfect box for every customer, from first time collector to hardcore hobbyist. And in this interview, she teaches me all about the mail order subscription service, how they got started, how collector toys are making a huge comeback here in 2020. Make sure to check them out at hcsvintagebox.com. And without further ado, here's the interview. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. My very special guest today is Veronica Sopher. Veronica, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Of course. So now for my audience who has no idea, because I was kind of blown away when you reached out to me. You told me that you are in the collectors and comic book kind of industry. I was a little bit shocked, to be honest with you. I don't mean to be stereotypical, but when I think of comic books and collectibles, I think of the 40-year-old virgin. I think of the Big Bang Theory guys. So I mean, just kind of tell me all about that, kind of just your history about how you got into this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my brother is a collector and has been growing up, a typical kind of collector you might expect. And I hang out with him a lot. And growing up, we were watching Star Wars together and all of those movies. And now we find ourselves as 40-some-year-olds texting each other one-liners from the Goonies or, Independence Day or some movie like that. So it's a shared passion that we've had. And he was really, really into it. I have a marketing background. And so when he decided to launch an in-person show, it was the perfect chance for us to partner and work together. I loved his friends. They were great guys and girls, and a lot of the wives would come and hang out. And so we would do these in-person shows where people would have their comic books and vintage toys and collectibles and memorabilia, and I was always kind of an outsider, but people liked me and they treated me well, and I had a really good time, and I loved their passion. And so I was always taking pictures and posting it on our social media and really kind of being the right-hand man, if you will, for the show. And then we decided to think outside the box and create a subscription box, if you will. So we came up with the idea of bringing the experience of an in-person show to people's front door. Because one of the great things about an in-person show is the collectors are exchanging ideas, memories. There's a lot of trade going on, a lot of buying and selling, and the camaraderie is just really fantastic. It's just so much fun. And I love being around that atmosphere. I always have a good time. And so I thought it would be fun to capture all of that. The experience of finding that one comic book you always wanted, or that one Nintendo Game Boy toy, that Game Boy toy that you just never got, and now you have it, and being able to experience that as an adult. And so it was something my brother and I talked about, and we said, hey, let's launch a subscription box and see if we can bring the show. The name of our show is the Houston Collector Showcase. Bring it to life and bring it to people that don't live here in the Houston area. So that's what we did.
So it started out as at the collector show in Houston. And how many of those events had you done prior to deciding, hey, you know what, let's kind of go into the subscription-based mail order model?
Yeah, we've done probably 3 or 4 dozen shows.
Okay.
Same group of people. We're doing them for a few years. We're meeting every couple of months. And then my brother would set up at different shows when we weren't having ours. And so those guys are always together buying and trading and calling each other when they have deals. Really, really true at the heart collectors. People who have a passion for it. They've got rooms set up in their homes to display their treasures and their collections. And so this was just a great way to bring them all together. So we had experience doing in-person events before we launched the box.
So is that kind of what makes you guys different, is the fact that you have that collector's background? So when somebody orders and somebody gets something, this is very well vetted. This is something that is really high quality product. And
yeah, absolutely. We've got our model is a little bit different. We're very niche. And so we know what our customers want. And we've got different tiers of our business model. So the second and third tier of our business model allows you to have more input and say into what your box is going to look like. So we will curate a basic box for you with $100 worth of vintage collectibles. And then if you get the second or third tier, you have an opportunity to give us a list of all your favorite things that you collect. Maybe you're just into Star Wars or He-Man or Hot Wheels or a 1950s memorabilia. We will curate each box for you uniquely based on what your needs are. So there's a lot of time put into it, a lot of thought. We want to make sure you're getting some variety, and we do have a guarantee on all of our boxes. So if you're unhappy with something, we want your feedback. We want to know how we did. And the great thing about our product is that each box is unique. You will never get a duplicate box because our collection and our inventory is always revolving.
Well, when you first got started in the subscription-based model, like what was your background? I know you said you did a little bit of marketing, but I mean, to go completely into that, I mean, have you always been an entrepreneur? What is your background with that?
Yeah, so we've always had an entrepreneurial background in our family. And so we watched our grandparents launch a restaurant and run it for 30 some odd years. My mom would sell Tupperware or Avon very successfully for a while. So it was no surprise that my brother was in this business, and his hobby really was becoming a full-on business. And so we saw an opportunity and took advantage of it and really did our research. I actually attended a conference put on by an organization that specializes in subscription boxes to get a better understanding of the logistics and everything that's involved. And so I think having that drive and passion to want to do something was the first step. And the second step was having a process in place to understand the realities of what it's going to take to make it happen.
Okay. Because I kind of always was thinking, well, what if you want to do the subscription model first, and then you kind of come up with a product? Yours was completely the opposite way around. You already had the passion. You knew what was going to sell, what was going to be perfect. You just fit that around it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a great way to learn about how entrepreneurs were working. I have a traditional 9-to-5 marketing background. And so that isn't always the same model that translates over to running your own business or side business. And so having to understand the logistics and all the complications that come with that, and just really being prepared. So research was key. But once we had the passion and the idea, we knew it would take off.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I find super interesting is you keep mentioning your brother. Now, you guys run it together is what you said, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. He does the fulfillment and he's got the expertise in the business. And my sister and I handle all the marketing and public relations. And we do some of the more executive type work, making sure our business end of it's in order, the bookkeeping, those kinds of things. So it's really turned into a fun sibling hobby, which is great because we all have our own thing going on, but it's something that keeps us connected. So our email threads might be, like I said, a one-liner from Independence Day, and then the next thread is about some of the finances for the box or a marketing idea for the box. And so it keeps us connected, and I think that that's really the benefit for us.
Well, one of the interesting things about that is I feel like there is this common cliche of not going into business with family. So the fact that you guys were able to do that, they say the only kind of ship that won't float is a partnership, but you guys seem to be breaking the mold with all of that. And what is the secret to being able to do something like that with family and, not just 2, but 3?
Yeah, honestly, someone asked me that question recently, and I think it's a shared vision. We have a shared vision to create for people that feeling that we get when we have a memory of our youth. It's such a shared positive feeling that we have that we want to make sure that other people get it. So when they open their box and they pick up maybe a stack of cards from some game they played, that it brings back memories of their youth and maybe their family, because that's what it does for us. We grew up and my brother had Transformers bed sheets and bedspread, and then you go to my room and I had strawberry shortcake sheets and bedspread. And so it was a simpler time in our lives that we have great memories of. And being able to provide products to people like that, we're hoping will recreate those feelings, because that's what we want. And having that shared vision makes it simple to make business decisions.
prior to coming from the collection with the Houston shows and everything, did you already have a client base built up from taking in some of the emails? I'm just kind of wondering about how you got your first clients when it came to the subscription boxes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We had an established network of people that would attend our show. So we had an email list. We also had just a network of collectors in the region, San Antonio region, DFW region. But our first few subscriptions, ironically, came from the East Coast. I think our first one was maybe out of New York and then maybe Connecticut. And so we got those through just Instagram ads. So being able to have a strong social media following locally was good for us, but making sure we expanded our reach and investing in ads was helpful too.
So is that where you feel like you've kind of gotten a lot more of your business more nationally, is once you started going into those platforms like the Instagrams and the Facebook advertising and paying for that? Is that where you started to see a lot of the success nationally?
I think so. And then too, we were launching right around the holidays. So as we were gearing up towards Thanksgiving last year, people were prime and looking for unique gifts. And so that was the other thing. So we made sure that we had all of our infrastructure in place so that we could start advertising in the late fall, preparing for the holidays. And so that was the other thing that we did. And I think really having unique, genuine posts on social media helps with the organic reach. And so we've done a few things since then to enhance our website and make it a little bit more attractive and set up our Google My Business account. And so we're learning as we grow. And that's also part of the fun, right? And so making some of those mistakes, or not maybe necessarily mistakes, but not getting the bang for your buck that you wanted, is actually really helpful, because then you can use that and flip it and figure out how to get more bang for your buck. So that's all part of the entrepreneur experience too.
Well, one thing that I did when I was kind of doing some research, I noticed how professional your Instagram looked and how many great photos. They were very high quality. Is really pretty. If you want to give your Instagram plug right now, but I mean, who did you have to bring in? Somebody third party, or is that somebody within your guys' group that was able to do that?
Yeah. So, thanks for saying that. Yes, we're on Instagram at HCS Vintage. And we have a great network of artists and collectors that we work with that would come to our shows regularly. So our first few rounds of art really came from a local artist that we work with that's in the collector space. And so tapping into him and promoting him, he's also tagged in a lot of those posts, just acknowledging him for his art, was fantastic. And it gave us a good sense of our brand as we established it. And so ultimately we used him for our logo design as well too. So it was a really good partnership so that we could highlight their art and tap into a market that we knew we wanted to get into.
Now, there's always going to be growing pains whenever you're starting a business. So for somebody that is wanting to get into the subscription models, if you have to go back and fix a couple of mistakes, what would you tell somebody who's starting out, like as far as startup capital to get into the subscription-based business model? What are we thinking? What would you say as far as startup costs for something like that for anyone who wants to be successful?
I think you have to be realistic with two things. Number one, your budget, and the second thing, your timeline. So when someone gives you a deadline, I'll be able to have these pictures for you by this date, add another week or two. When someone says, hey, the content for your website will be ready by this date, add a week or two. There's always going to be some delays. And if you're happily surprised and you don't have them, great. But otherwise, give yourself some cushion. If you think about what other industries do, maybe look at construction. They always build in contingencies in their budget lines. But as entrepreneurs, you have to make sure that we're building in contingency time, because time is money, into our planning. So I would say budgeting a little bit more time is really important. And so when you do have delays with the website, or maybe your product or inventory didn't come in the way you wanted it to, making sure you haven't overcommitted is important, because you don't want to disappoint people, especially as you're launching.
Well, it seems like you said, because you already had the business infrastructure in place, it seemed, based on the way you're describing it, it seems like it flowed really well from the beginning. I mean, what growing pains did you really experience early on?
I think early on for us, because we probably didn't experience the traditional growing pains because we are so niche and we have our inventory already.
Hmm.
But we did have challenges with our website, just the content not
Okay.
getting done the way we wanted it. You have to think about, how does this look on a mobile device versus what does it look like on a desktop?
Interesting.
And analyzing where your sales are coming from. And well, if it's coming more from a mobile device, then we want to reformat our content to look better for a mobile device than for a desktop. So some of those decision points we weren't ready. We didn't know that we needed to make them so early on in the process. So that was some learning that we had to do. But again, if we had just built in a little bit more time, our deadlines wouldn't have been so pressed.
Hmm. Now, when somebody is going into any kind of a business, they're always trying to make sure, hey, I want to see, in order for me to have a successful business, I want to be able to hit, X amount of profit margins and stuff like that. And because your guys' industry is so niche, when somebody else new, I'm not talking about you specifically, but when they're coming into it, what should they be saying is a profitable business? Is it 20%, 30% profit margins specifically in the mail order business? Is that a high profit margin industry is what I'm kind of trying to get at.
Sure. And I think it can be. It absolutely can be. I mentioned that I had attended a conference before, and there was a couple of different sessions about that. And it's really going to depend on your space. So if you're in cosmetics, you could look at a 40 to 50% profit rate. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're in something that's maybe handmade items like candles, or something that takes a little bit of more resource, you may have a lower profit margin. So it really depends on your space. If you can get your items at wholesale,
Mm-hmm.
your biggest challenge is going to be your marketing and your postage. And postage rates do go up, and they've
Okay.
gone up this last year. So that was, I participate in a lot of the online groups with subscription box businesses. And I would say one of the biggest issue that we have is the cost of postage. And
Okay.
some subscription boxes don't even ship internationally because it's just way too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And so the boxes in the UK usually stay in the UK. The boxes in Canada stay in Canada, and here in the States as well. So I think you just have to do your research and know your space. If you have crystals maybe, and so your box is going to have a book and some crystals and a candle, depending on where you got those items from, your profit margin could be 60 or 75%.
Wow.
So
Really
you really
impressive.
have to do your research. And the other thing I learned is that each month, depending on your inventory, that profit margin could go up or down. So as long
Mm-hmm.
as you have determined ahead of time what a reasonable margin is for you, maybe the low is 35 and the high is 70. As long as you fall somewhere in there every month, then you're going to be on track with your budget. But if you go month to month and haven't pre-planned your inventory 6-9 months out, then that's going to be a challenge on those months when you have a low profit margin. So it is definitely something I encourage everyone to research before they
Mm-hmm.
do. And again, add contingency, because you're always going to need that.
Because that's one of the things that I noticed on your website when I was going through your guarantees. And you said, there's 100% satisfaction guarantee. And then, like you said, where you just talked about the postage, you pay for the postage to send it back, and then they get everything back. So that's really a brilliant move, when you consider how much postage is going up consistently. So
Yeah,
it's a great
absolutely.
business move right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, people have to do their research. I recommend, there are a couple of courses online that you can take to learn about how to run a subscription box business, and do a little research, and then talk to folks that actually do the boxes that you're interested in, and see how they're working. Our pet boxes super successful, our hair product boxes super
Mm-hmm.
successful. And there's a couple of different platforms that you can use to learn what people are doing and doing well.
One of my questions about that would be inventory levels.
Mhm.
Do you have to, like you said, you've been a collector for a long time. So I'm sure you guys are a little bit different to where you guys had a lot more things stored. But if, let's say you had huge orders come in, all of a sudden you got, just a rush from this podcast. How much inventory do you guys have on hand that you can reasonably ship out to get to as many customers? Like, how many customers do you think you'd be able to reach at this point in time?
We could easily reach a few hundred every month, no
Mm-hmm.
problem. We are super niche. And so we have the time and the inventory to curate those boxes based on people's individual needs. And we know that we're unique. And that's what we are counting on, is that people will like that about us, that they won't get the same box their buddy down the street is getting. And so we have the luxury of doing that, but we built our model around that variable. And so I would encourage any business owner, especially someone looking in the subscription box business, to look at your process and then build your model around what's going to work. Because if you've got too many variables, you won't be able to be consistent.
One thing I want to start talking about the products that come in the boxes, because there's some questions that I have on that. But before we go there, I'm interested in how much work went into figuring out the pricing. Was there a lot? Did you have to change prices early on when it comes to all three different levels? How did that work out that you guys were able to do that? Did you work with somebody? How was that?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, we do have a couple of events that we do every year, and we know how the market fluctuates.
Got it.
We're constantly checking eBay, constantly putting things up for auction all over the country, and so we know what those rates are ahead of time. So having that background knowledge was super easy for us in terms of pricing. So once the prices were established, we felt like we could easily adjust each box accordingly. And so that's what we've been able to do. So I think, again, depending on what space you're in, as long as you have a knowledge of that space, it's going to be much easier for pricing. If you don't, then I encourage you to hire somebody that does, even on a consulting basis, because that will end up saving you money in the end.
Well, I mean, and you're just... So it's impressive because of how much, not just how much inventory you guys have, but I mean, you guys have to deal with, when it comes to licensing Star Wars and Marvel. And do you guys ever worry about getting hit with that? Like, you go see a lawyer like early on? What was the process with trademarks and copyrights?
Sure. So we have all of our terms on our website. We did vet all of our materials through an attorney just to make sure we were in compliance, and we certainly wanted to make sure we were adhering to all the rules and regulations. I encourage you to also, if someone's interested in a business like this, look at what your state laws are as well, because each state has additional statutes that might impact your business as well. So again, it's always good to just talk to a lawyer to understand all the legalities are involved with maybe either licensing or taxing or billing or anything like that, because it's going to vary from state to state. So hire somebody. It's worth it.
Now, one other thing that kind of comes to mind prior is, because you are essentially the face of the company in some ways, as far as being the person marketing and being on the podcast, have you noticed, being a female minority owned business, have you run into any challenges, or has it been, not really consequential or in any way? Like, what's that been like?
Yeah, so it really hasn't. I feel like, a geek is a geek is a geek.
Yeah.
And as long as you know your stuff, you can play, right? And so that's how it goes. And so, I can go one-liner for one-liner with the best of them. And I may look silly doing it because I don't look the part, but I appreciate it. Yeah. And I have a passion for it. And so when we're at the conventions, my hair's in a ponytail, I'm in a t-shirt, and I'm, flipping through $1 comic book bins just like everybody else, having a good time. And so there's a lot of camaraderie, and we live in such a diverse community in the Houston area where collectors come from all walks of life. You've got oil and gas executives go to these events. You've got real estate brokers coming to these events. I've got a doctor that comes every month to our event, and he's like, okay, I'm just off my shift, and I'm looking for this, and this today. I'm like, well, so-and-so's in there. He's probably got a big stash, so he'll run in there, and then he'll be running, and I'll see him 2 months later. And sure enough, he's happy to tell me about the next collection. And then again, we get, guys that are living still at home in their decked out room with, lined ceiling to floor with collectibles. So it hasn't been an issue at all.
Well, let's kind of talk a little bit about what comes in the box, because one of the videos that you sent me that I will be posting so people can kind of see, I was blown away. I know you said that every box is valued at $100, but I was blown away by the amount of content that comes in every box.
Yeah. So every box is guaranteed to have $100 worth of retail items, and they're all collectible. So they're all going to be used, but they're going to be in good shape. We're not going to give you anything we wouldn't sell at any of our in-person shows, but you're going to get anything from comic books to vintage toys to Game Boy, Nintendo cartridges to my favorite.
Oh.
Yeah, the favorite item that I've seen in a box is a stack of X-Files trading cards
Mhm.
this thick. And I was like, oh, and I was just looking at it because, I liked X-Files. It was one of those shows I was really into, right? And so
Yeah.
I was like, there's a smoking man, and it was super cool to just see that there were trading cards because back then I didn't know there were trading cards, but I knew it was a show I liked. So again, t-shirts, packs of cards, packs of stickers. We built a box just the other day that had a 45 in it, a 45 record.
Hmm.
And so depending on what you're into, we'll find something that matches it. Now, I don't recommend you chew the gum. If you get any gum in them, don't chew it.
Well, I mean, as you can see, I've got a giant Iron Man poster behind me. I'm obviously a fan, and I even have the Tony Stark sunglasses from the movie. So
Ah,
I am definitely a fan of that. But if something was coming in a box, I mean, like you said, the higher tier packages,
mhm.
I can kind of send you guys what I'm into and what I like, and you guys could kind of send me some stuff like that. Possibly, like you said, Game Boy cartridges. So Pokemon Red, Blue, something
Yeah.
like that. Is that something you guys have sent in the past?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, depending on the tier that you select, a menu will come up, and you'll get to pick and choose the things that you want on it. And so, if you're like, "Hey, I'm really into Hasbro. I'm really into Kenner. I'm really into anything from the '50s, just Transformers, Pokemon, you name it, Garbage Pail Kids, we
Mhm.
got it." So you tell us what you're into, and we'll curate your box. So the number of items will depend on what it is that you've requested.
Okay.
And the retail value of them. So that's essentially how it works. And then so you do get a discount just for your own clarification. You do get a discount if you subscribe to a 3-month or 6-month plan. So your
Mhm.
boxes actually come out a little bit cheaper. And then we also have just one-time boxes available for purchase for gifts. So if you
Okay.
don't want to subscribe and you just want to buy one, you can just go on and buy one, or you subscribe to a subscription. And this is something else that people often ask me about subscription box business. If you're using a subscription box model, that person's account is going to auto renew every either 1 month or 3 month or 6 months, depending on the plan. So people have to go in and pause their subscription if they want to take a month off and get it back going, or they can just purchase one-time boxes. So we have a little bit of everything for everybody.
Hmm. And that's one of the things that you had mentioned earlier is when Christmas came, you guys kind of launched around that time. So, I mean, it was explosive growth early on. And that's one of the things that I was thinking of is I have so many, friends and family that this service would be so awesome. But if I wanted to send a one-time, gift to them and say, hey, this is, my family's a little bit older. My sister's in her, early 40s, though she looks like she's in her 20s. She's beautiful. I love you.
That's good. Nothing wrong with that.
So, but I mean, I'd love to send her something like that. I mean, I think Garbage Pail Kids was her thing back in the day. So, I mean, just that nostalgia was so cool.
Yeah, and that's what we're going for. At the end of the day, we're working as a team to just generate those feelings. And for us as a small little micro family of siblings, that is something that we value. And so that's what we're trying to share with our box.
Now, the only major thing going on right now is a pandemic around the world. And with that, how is it that you kind of have changed your business model or are making sure to make people feel comfortable when they're getting stuff in the mail?
Absolutely. So all of our items will come packaged. All the books will come in sleeves, and all of the figurines that you might get, action figures, they're going to come packaged separately as well. And so everything is going to be packed and secured and safe. And then we've taken measures when we deliver to the post office to make sure we're following protocols. And not being at in-person shows has really challenged collectors as a
Mhm.
whole, because a lot of us get that camaraderie and fellowship from in-person events. So for us, being able to continue to bring that feeling to people in a safe way is priority. So that's why we think our box is prime for right now, because we just know there are collectors that are stuck at home. They
Right.
can't go to these events and just to hang out with people and high five somebody when they find a really cool comic book in a bin. And so we want to be able to create that for them virtually.
Now, as a collector, you personally, or your brother, since he's so big, he's been into it longer. What's really one of the coolest things that you guys have seen personally, whether it be, number one one of the earliest number one comics of Superman or something like that? I mean, what has been your experience?
Well, we've seen all kinds of things, and we see things on a regular basis. So I think books are probably the most impressive things that we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
We've sent things off to auction, and have seen stuff at our shows. The thing that I like to see the most, which may not be super popular, are the lunch boxes. So when I saw a She-Ra lunchbox with the actual mug with it, I was like, oh my gosh, that is so amazing. And it wasn't like super expensive or valuable,
Mm-hmm.
but I loved because when we would watch cartoons, She-Ra came on right after He-Man. So I
Okay.
had to endure watching that with him so that
Okay.
I could get to someone who was really kicking it in gear and taking care of business, at least in my mind. So I more related to her character. So when I saw that lunchbox, I was just like, and with the
That
thermos,
was
I
it
was
for
like,
you.
oh, that's just the best. So, and then my other prized possession is we're big fans of the movie Armageddon.
Okay.
And so again, one-liners all the time. We're texting each other. And my brother was at a show and he came back and he was like, hey, I picked this up for you. And it was an action figure from some of the characters in Armageddon. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know they made action figures for this. This is fantastic. And so I still have it in a box and it's still there. And my kids are like, are you going to open that? And I'm like, no, that's Harry Stamper. I can't, it's Harry Stamper. No. So, again, things that have meaning for individuals are really priceless. And that's what we're getting at.
And I think, obviously with Disney buying Marvel and bringing all the characters to the screen, I'm sure this has got to be a growing industry. So for, a parent who wants to kind of start something with their kids, I'm sure this is such a great, little bonding moment to have something like that. I know Gary Vaynerchuk, he kind of started something where, every Saturday he goes out garage sailing and he buys cars and tubs of cars. And he's like, hey, look, this is $80. This is, more and more. And, that collector's mantra, I guess, I mean, he's starting to get that and he's starting to generate a lot of interest in something like that. And so this is a great way for people to kind of start that bond with their kids. And is a great business for you guys to be in. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're excited too. We're having so much fun. And for us, that's ultimately what we want, is to have fun with each other and to spread that fun for other people and other families. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
Well, honestly, I learned so much from you. I mean, just in that little bit, and also just reviewing. So, and I want to go ahead and make sure that we talk about your website and then, do these plugs. So the website is hcsvintagebox.com, correct?
Correct.
All right. You guys are actually already on the first page of Google. It was a little ways down, but when I searched collectibles, you guys were up there. So you guys are doing good with that. Is there anything else that you would want to plug, whether it be your Instagram or anything else? The floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, really, I just want to let your viewers and listeners know that we are running a promo code. So I think I shared that code with you. So it'll be available to anyone that wants to purchase a box. They get 20% off their first time order. So I encourage you to take a look at that. And it is first time 2020, I believe. So we'll add that to the list and make sure people try our box and give us some feedback. We'd appreciate it.
Sounds great. Well, seriously, I truly appreciate all of your time today. I thank you so much. And for everybody listening, make sure to check them out.
Great. Thank you.